And today's story is a story about a cobbler. And I was thinking about this morning, and I'm not really sure why there are so many folk tales with cobblers in them. And woodcutters. I mean, surely there were other kinds of people who did other kinds of things that you could tell stories about, but there are a lot of stories about cobblers. So do you guys know what a cobbler is? A cobbler's a shoemaker. He or she is somebody who makes shoes. So this is a story about a cobbler and his wife, and they lived in a little village, and they made shoes in their house, and they were pretty happy most of the time. So one day, the cobbler's wife decided she was going to make some squabs for dinner. Does anybody know what a squab is? He knows what a squab is. A squab is a pigeon that you can eat after you cook it. And it's really small. It's about the size, like it's a single serving chicken, kind of. So I know some of you are vegetarians and would not want to eat a squab, but some of you are not vegetarians, and it would be like a little mini chicken. It's apparently good for food security. We should all be thinking about raising squab for food security. So she was going to cook these squabs for dinner. And she got them all ready, and she put them in the oven. And then she said, "Bye, dear, I'm going to go visit my friend. I'll be back later to make the rest of dinner. Have a good time sewing that pair of shoes." And off she went. So the cobbler was sitting there, working on the shoes, and after a while, the squab started to smell really good. You know how something's in the oven and it starts to smell really good? And he started to feel a little bit hungry, even though it wasn't really dinner time yet. And so he got up, he put his shoemaking stuff down, and he got up and he went over to the oven and he opened it, and it smelled really, really good when you opened the oven. And he thought, well, I'll just have a little taste. So he took a knife and he cut off a little piece of one of them. He tasted it, and it tasted really good. And he thought, well, I'm really hungry. I don't really want to wait until dinner time. Surely my wife won't mind if I just eat my squab. We can have other stuff for dinner too. So he pulled it out and he ate it all up. His tummy was full. He felt good. He went back to work on his shoe again. But you know what? That other squab in the oven kept smelling really good. And he thought, I'm still hungry. Maybe I should, no, I shouldn't. Yeah, but I'm still hungry. So he went over to the oven and he pulled the other squab out, and guess what he did? Yeah, he ate the whole thing. So then there's no squabs left, and there's this little pile of bones on the table. And he started feeling really guilty. I shouldn't have done that. My wife's going to be really mad when she realizes what I did. And besides, then we won't have any dinner. So he decided to conceal the evidence. So he took all the bones out in the backyard and stuck them in the ground and covered them up with some dirt. So she would never know what happened to the squabs. Poor Anya. And so his wife came home, started making the other parts of dinner, went to the oven to check on the squabs, and there was nothing there. And she said, "Who ate the squabs?" And the cobbler said, "Not me. I don't know who ate the squabs." "What do you mean, who ate the squabs? They're in the oven, aren't they?" She said, "No, they're not in the oven." And he said, "Well, maybe the neighbors ate the squabs." And she said, "That does not make any sense. Our neighbors are nice people. They would not come in my house and eat my food out of my oven, especially not with you sitting there." And he said, "Well, it wasn't me. I don't know who ate the squabs. Maybe you ate the squabs." She said, "What do you mean, what? Maybe I ate the squabs? I haven't even been here." And they argued back and forth, accusing each other of having eaten the squabs. And the cobbler would not admit that he had really done it. And so finally, the wife got so fed up with the argument that she said, "Well, fine, I just won't talk to you until you admit that you ate the squabs." And the cobbler said, "Well, fine, I won't talk to you until you admit you ate the squabs." And so they agreed that nobody was going to talk unless they were admitting that they had eaten the squabs. So nobody was going to talk until somebody admitted that they had eaten the squabs. So nobody talked for the whole rest of the day. And then the next day, nobody talked for the whole rest of the day. They couldn't gossip about their neighbors. They couldn't talk about the shoe orders. They couldn't figure out what to have for supper. They didn't talk. And this went on for 3 whole days. Finally, on the 3rd day, there was a knock on the door. And the cobbler's wife went and she opened the door and she looked out, and there was a great big traveling carriage with a gentleman, and his servant had knocked on the door. And the servant said, "We are trying to get to the next town. Can you give me directions?" And the cobbler's wife opened her mouth and she started to say, "Go that way." And she covered her mouth up, said, "Oh." She couldn't talk because her husband was standing right there, and she agreed not to talk until somebody admitted that they had eaten the squabs. And nobody had admitted they had eaten the squabs yet, so she couldn't talk. So she kind of gestured and said, like it's that way. The servant thought this was a little odd. It's not what you usually expect when you knock on somebody's door. Somebody who can clearly talk but won't talk to you. And so he went back to the carriage and he said, "I'm not sure what's wrong with that lady, but she won't talk to me. And so she says it's that way, so I guess we'd better try and get some directions from somebody a little further that way." Okay. So he got back on the carriage, and the cobbler's wife couldn't stand it. She was so tired of this not talking, and she was so tired of not being able to do anything she needed to do that involved talking. And so she ran out to the carriage, and she got up there, and she still wasn't talking. But she managed to convey through some gestures that she would go with them and help them find their way. And the servant told the horses to go, and they started going down the road. Well, the cobbler thought she was leaving forever because they'd been in this silent fight for 3 days, and he thought surely she was never going to come back, and he was really upset about it because really he did love his wife, and he did want his wife to be part of his life. And he ran out the door and he said, "Stop! I love you! I ate the squabs!" And the cobbler's wife was so excited that she jumped down off the moving carriage, and I'm glad to report that she was really good at jumping off of moving things and did not hurt herself. And she ran back to her husband and flung her arms around him, and they sort of dissolved into a pile of laughing and crying and apologizing. The gentleman and his servant had no idea what was going on and stopped the carriage and came back to find out. And the cobbler and his wife explained the whole thing, and the gentleman and his servant got a good laugh out of it, just like you all did. And then they went on their way, and the cobbler and his wife went back to their mostly happy life. Well, nobody's happy all the time. But doing something that upsets somebody else and not being willing to admit to it messes up most normal happiness in some way or another. Thank you for listening to the story. We are going to go to our classrooms now and enjoy our day.